just for you and me. The dogwood was never to grow strong and tall again. Hello, my name is Lonnie Jones. I want to tell you a little bit about my life story and what God's done for me. And believe you me, He's done plenty for me. I believe, was talking on episode 17 about the truck getting loose in the driveway, and when it come off the other side of the road, it cut and went around behind the people's house. And had it not done that, it would have went right through the picture window of the house. So if God didn't have anything to do with that, I don't know who did. He knew I couldn't have stood the pressure. I may be in jail today, or would never got out of debt, because it would have destroyed that house. And if there was anybody in it, it would have too. So that was my experience getting a pickup truck up the driveway over in Bellshire subdivision in the house we had just rented. So I was also making music at the time, and I had just pretty much quit baseball. My baseball days were pretty much over, and we've started playing music and playing mostly bluegrass, some country, but mostly bluegrass. And so anyway, when I was playing, did have a country band that done a lot of country music, and I was playing square dances and round dances. And of course, if you play a square dance, you gotta play fiddle tunes and do some bluegrass. But when you round dance or two-step, then you got to get into the country. So I had that truck that had went around that house. I had got it, of course, got me a record and got it back up to the house. And I was rebuilding the motor for it, so I rebuilt the motor for that pickup truck. And I pretty much quit drag racing at that point with that vehicle, with that particular vehicle. I had quit drag racing with it, and I had put a camper on it, and we were using that to ride around and carry equipment around to play our music in. So there's a little bit more to that pickup truck yet that I want to tell you about, and had nothing to do with drag racing, because we had quit drag racing with that pickup truck. And so we were up in Swanee, Tennessee, which is on top of Mount Eagle Mountain. We was at the community center in Swanee, Tennessee, and we were doing a show once a month up there, which was a square dance more than anything, I guess. It was a square dance, but in a square dance, you don't square dance every time you have a square dance. You have 4 or 5 songs, and you do another square dance. So that's what I used the pickup truck for at that time. And so the rest of the story about the pickup truck pretty much is we were coming off of Mount Eagle Mountain one night, and I kept hearing this racket. I kept hearing, hearing this racket, and all of a sudden it acted real funny. And so when it started acting funny, I pulled over to the side of the road, and on a Chevrolet, it has 4 bolts that holds the cap over the bearing to keep the axle in. On a Chevrolet back in '65, I believe it was about a '65 or '66 Chevrolet pickup truck, it didn't have pins or keepers to keep the axles in on the inside of the rear end. It just had 4 bolts that held it on the outside and held the bearing inside. So anyway, these 4 bolts had worked loose, and the whole axle had come out and was hitting the fender on the truck. Well, I had a '68 GTO up there that night. The lady I was married to, which was my first wife, she had followed us up there in the '68 GTO. So I had to pretty much stay there with the car, and they come back the next day. Everybody I don't know how they got in the GTO, but the whole band got in the GTO, and they got home and sent a guy back the next day to bring the truck on home. But that blue pickup truck is like I said, Chevrolet pickup truck. So I'd had my problems out of that truck. So I think along about that time I sort of got rid of it, and I was drag racing 54 and 55 Oldsmobiles. Well, I was racing a 1955 Oldsmobile, and it had the hydromatic transmissions in it. And I'm one of those guys that don't like to lose, of course. And so when I went up there, I assumed that you could just go up there and drag race, and that's about all there was to it, because you drove the car to work every day. Well, I got up there and found out that's not the way it works at all. If you work on those things, it's just a long story if you've never drag raced. So I was getting beat pretty bad, and I'm not one to lose. I don't like to lose. So in the Oldsmobile, I started sinking money in that Oldsmobile, building the motor, all this stuff in it. And I think I told you already about the rear end in the Oldsmobile, so I told you about that. So once I got that rear end in that thing, and what they call a stall speed for the automatic transmission, and I was the first one in Nashville, Tennessee to ever have a stall speed. And a stall speed is inside the transmission. It's a catalytic converter. There's two different types of catalytic converters, but they're made for different things. There's one that's inside of automatic transmission that's got fins in it that picks up the oil, fluid, and makes it go. Well, they invented one where you could bend the fins over, and you could sit there with your foot on the brake, and it would rev up to 3,000 RPMs, almost like you do a standard transmission. Well, when I got that 456 rear end in there, in one of my stories I've told, I got the 456 rear end in it, and I got the stall speed in it, which was a torque converter with the fins bent over. That was the end of that. Nobody could beat me. Not in my class now. Now, you got classes you run you drag race in. You got A, B, C, D, all down the line that you race in. And I believe I was in what they call a G class. Well, on a Friday night, the night before, we was drag racing, and a boy broke down up at the end of the drag strip, and I had a chain in the back of my car. Now, we're getting around what God done for me now. This story is coming towards God, let me tell you. Coming towards God. And I had this chain in there, and in my race car, I had a 2-gallon gas can up by the radiator, had all the gas out of the tank. The tank was completely dry, because the less weight you had to pull, the faster the vehicle would run. So I had a 2-gallon can mounted up by the radiator in the front, and I was using that 2-gallon can to drag race with it, and I actually drove the car to work about every day. But I didn't have to go but about 3 miles to work every day. I was almost in walking distance. But anyway, so a boy broke down at the end of the drag strip, and I had a chain, so I took that chain and pulled him back around to the parking lot that on a Friday night. Well, no, I'm sorry. It was on a Saturday night. Union Hill only raced on Saturdays and Sundays. So that was on Saturday night that I pulled him around into the parking lot, and I had, like I said, a log chain, and how I was carrying my gas with me was an Army can. And most everybody that knows anything about the Army can, first of all, they're green. And second of all, they got a flat cap that you screw on. Now, they do make a spout that you can screw on. And guess what? I had a spout on mine. I didn't have it. The lid blocked off. So I had screwed the cap on there that had the spout on it. Well, when I said in the car, that next Sunday, that was Saturday night. Sunday, I stopped at the service station, and I get 3 or 4 gallons of gas. I didn't get it full of gas, but it had 3 or 4 gallons in it. And I set it behind my seat the driver's seat. I sat it behind the driver's seat, and it was sitting on that chain. The chain was all wadded up in the floor, and that gas can was sitting on that chain. That gas can was sitting back there wobbling. Of course, young and crazy, didn't have a clue to what I should have been or shouldn't have been doing, but I wanted to drag race anyway. So that I take off. At this time I'm living off Dickerson Road there, and I put that gas can behind my seat, and I head off towards Union Hill. Well, there's several ways you can get to Union Hill drag strip. And the way I was going, at that time, I went straight Old Hickory Boulevard across Dickerson Road, straight down to where I believe there's a big school down there now. I'm not too sure what the name of the school is, but there's a big school. After you cross a little creek, you turn right, and that carries you right up to Union Hill. Well, when you get up to, it's about probably 5 miles round up there to it. But when you get up there, there's a little church that sits up on the corner, and you turn left on Union Hill Road, and when you turn left, you go down a swag, then up and around, and there's Union Hill drag strip on your right. Well, when I come up to the church, and I turn left at the church, and begin to pick up speed going down the grade. It's a very small grade, wasn't very much, it wasn't very long. When I started down that grade, I heard that gas can turn over. Well, of course, a race car is high compression. A race car is very high compression. So, and I wasn't running any tailpipes on the thing. I didn't have tailpipes on it. I was running a short tailpipe, something you could drive on the road and get by with, but it didn't have the whole tailpipe on it. So I heard that gas can turn over, and I'm going driving down the road, and I reached back over the seat and turned that gas can up, set it back up. Well, when I did that, I let it up on the exhaust, and of course the first thing it did was fire flames shot out of those mufflers. That's the first thing that happened. And when those flames shot out, it set that gas on fire. When I looked back at the road, there was nothing between me and the windshield but fire. Nothing but fire. And let me tell you something another. Unless you've been there, you don't know what it's like. Trust me, I come out of that car, I was doing about 35 miles an hour. And I opened that car door and bailed out of that car. Well, I slid along beside the car until I started slowing down, and the car went on. Well, the car went on, and the door was open, and it curved around like so, till the car turned to the right. The car went straight, went up over a ditch, and it tried to turn over, but it couldn't turn over because the door was open. It come up and hit the door, flopped back on its wheel. Well, the car went out, made just a circle, come back and pointed towards the road with the door open, and sat there and burned. It tried to start, horn tried to blow. It done everything it could do because it was burning. Well, that was a 55 Oldsmobile. Well, I guess the best I can say, if it hadn't been for God that day, I would not be here. Only through the grace of God did He let me survive that mess. Well, I'm sliding down the road, and meat's coming off of my wrist, my elbows, my hips, and I had a polyester shirt on. It melted the polyester to me. If anybody don't know what a polyester shirt is, I can tell you what a polyester shirt is. It was stuck to me. It was burnt and stuck to me. It burnt my right arm and the right side of my face. It burnt me pretty bad. Well, boy, let me tell you, again, God saved my life. He saved my life. I don't know what He's got in store for me. I'm 78 years old right now, and Lord, how I don't know what in the world He thinks I can do to help anybody do anything. But anyway, He allowed me to live through that mess. Well, a friend of mine, I was in partners with another 56 Oldsmobile, and he was right behind me. Well, needless to say, everybody was stopping and looking. So he got me in the car and brought me back down to the hospital. And it was, at the time, it was called, I believe, called Madison Hospital. It was the only hospital around in this area. And I lived down here, so he brought me back to the hospital. Of course, they took my shirt off and all that stuff off and put me in a shower and run water all down my face and down my side, running nothing but pure water. And took me out there and put a bunch of stuff on me and then wrapped me up. And guess what? He and I went back to the racetrack. He and I went back to the racetrack because we needed to race his car. We didn't need to, but we felt like that was a thing we ought to do. We ended up going back up to the racetrack. And my wife never knew none of this was going on. We didn't have cell phones back then. So my wife did not know none of this was going on until I got home about dark at night from drag racing. So they fixed me up at the doctor's, carried me up. I went back up to the drag strip. We raced that other Oldsmobile, and he brought me back home. And then the next day, I went back up and got my car that burned up. I went back up and got it and brought it home. Well, that got me to looking for another Oldsmobile. Well, guess what? I found me a 1954 Oldsmobile. That one was a 55. I found me a 54. It would run a class lower than the 55 would, and I could use the motor, rear end, and everything out of it right in the other one. So that's what I did. I found me a 54 Oldsmobile, and when I put that motor and transmission over in that car, it was a beautiful, beautiful car. Everything inside of it was chrome. It was chrome on top of chrome. It was a holiday. It was a holiday, Oldsmobile holiday, and they had 2 doors. But this heavy as lead, they weighed about 3,600 pounds, and that's why it was in such a lower class. But when you hop those motors up in that transmission, automatic transmission, it would go about 50 foot and it'd jerk your head off, changing gears. And they were really, really good transmissions. So I took that 54 Oldsmobile, and I never lost another race, period. I could go to any drag strip I wanted to go to, and I could not lose. It was no way of losing. I changed the jets in the carburetor one time and forgot to put the jets back in the carburetor and went to Buffalo Valley and still won with no jets in the carburetor. Now, what do you think about that? Now, tell me how you can do that. It didn't even have a jet in the carburetor, and I still won. The car would absolutely fly for its size, weight, and horsepower, but it was all geared. It was all geared correctly. So anyway, so that Oldsmobile, I raced it for quite a while. I'm still making my music, everything. Then one day I was at Union Hill after all that, and I had the hood up on that thing. It was about 95 degrees, and I raised the hood on that thing. And just out of nowhere, I said to myself, I said, today is my last day. And nobody was around me or nothing. I just opened the hood and I was burning up. And I said, this is my last day. And I raced that day, won, carried that car home, called 2 people up and told them it was for sale. I sold to the first one I called. And one other time I went back to the drag strip, and that was many years later. This was along about 65 or 66, I guess, when I was doing that. Well, I got a 68 GTO, Pontiac GTO with a 4-speed in it. I did not get it to drag race for absolutely no reason whatsoever. I get it to drag race. I actually got it off of my brother-in-law. He had bought it brand new. and he drove it, and he never had change. He never had used anything but first, third, and fourth. That's all he ever used. He never did go to second gear. It was so powerful you could have took off in high nearly. Well, anyway, to make that more reasonable to understand, I bought the '68 GTO from him, and I had quit drag racing, and 3 or 4 years went by to about probably 1970 or 71, probably, is when, just out of curiosity, I carried it to Union Hill, totally out of curiosity, because it would flat fly on the street. Everybody had 442s, and not many people had GTOs. There wasn't a lot of GTOs put out, actually, but it was the car of the year. 1968, it was the Motor Trend Car of the Year. 1968. They'd take a sledgehammer and hit the nose of it, because the nose of it was made out of rubber. They'd take a sledgehammer and hit the nose of the car. So anyway, I carried it up there. Well, them boys that I used to race against, they were still racing. They were still up there. They were still having their phones turned off, their lights turned off, couldn't pay the rent. They were still doing all that. Well, I had sort of got my feet on the ground, got all that changed. I couldn't live like that any longer. So I carried that '68 deal, and the first guy I come up against, of course, they had what they call a Christmas tree. The lights come down yellow, 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 and green, and everybody would go. Well, different classes gave you the opportunity to start quicker than somebody else, depending on your class. Different ones could start quicker. You didn't start dead heat. You started, the lights would tell you when you could go. So the first thing they put me up against, and I wasn't up there to race. I wanted to see what the car, how good the car would perform. They put me up against the champion of Union Hill. He had a Corvette, and he was in a much higher class than I was. But he's supposed to be a lot faster than I was, but it was a street car. These cars were street cars. But you were allowed to put, they weren't slicks. They wasn't what they call slicks, but they were a compound that you could buy that acted like a slick, but it had tread on it. Well, I didn't have that. I had the same tar almost come from the factory on the GTO. So I pulled around there, and I beat him. Well, it's needless to say that they wasn't going to put up with that for 10 seconds. They'll go up there and change the rules. They say, well, we thought that was automatic. It was a 4-speed. And they said, we thought it was automatic. We put you in wrong. And they knew it was a 4-speed. They just thought, they just didn't have a clue that thing would run like it would run. So then they changed that back, and he beat me by no more than 6 inches. Even when they changed it, he beat me by no more than 6 inches. I drove right back around, past the parking lot, out the driveway, never been back to racetrack again, except a good friend of mine and my wife went up there about 3 years ago to watch a race. Just went up there just because they wanted to go. I went. Never been to a drag race since. I drove that GTO out of there. But anyway, the GTO would absolutely would fly, and so that was my racing with my GTO. Raced it two times, won one, lost one because they changed the time of when they clicked you in on your time, because they said they thought mine was automatic and it was actually a 4-speed. And I didn't miss no gear, and I didn't spin no tire. That thing was spinning tire. When you hit 4th gear, it would squall. So that done me in with racing. I've never been back to a racetrack ever again with a car to race or anything. I did go back with some good friends, me and my wife, about 3 or 4 years ago, just to watch a race, and it didn't do a thing for me. Same old jive. It's like always. So telling you about my drag racing had a lot to do with God and what God did for me. He saved one truck from going through a house for me. He saved me from being killed in one that I had to bail out of, and it was on fire. So I have to tell you the story around what God done for me to get God into the story. And we go to church on Sundays. We go to church up at the Friendship Missionary Baptist Church at 101 Flat Ridge Road every Sunday morning at 11 o'clock. And we sure would like to have you either come by to see us. Rita and myself go up on Sunday mornings, and if you can't come, tune us in on Facebook. That would be cool if you could do that, if you can't come. But we have a fiery preacher, let me tell you. He can get the job done, and I think you'd really enjoy coming up to church, because I was speaking a little bit a while ago about when I stuck my head under the car, and it was about 100 degrees, 95, 100 degrees underneath the hood of that car. And I said, this is my last day to race. Well, pretty much getting me into church, golf sort of got me into church almost the same way. I got so bad at golf. I was at a golf course, me and my wife was at a golf course. My wife could beat me, but a lot of the guys we played with. But we was at a golf course one Sunday, and we golfed every Sunday morning. About 16 of us golf every Sunday morning. And so anyway, I don't know what happened, but I think God was trying to tell me something. And I got bad enough that I hit a shot, and I looked over my wife. I said, next Sunday we're going to be in church. And I have not been back to a golf course on Sunday that I know of since. Certainly not on Sunday morning. I would have been to church before I go back to the golf course. Very few times I've ever played golf on Sunday since. So we're going to quit on 18 here, and we'll pick up on 19. And I'm sure 19 is going to have something that God done for me just as well. So we'll see you Sunday at Friendship Missionary Baptist Church at 101 Flat Ridge Road, Goodlettsville, Tennessee. So hope you'll come to see us. We'd love to see you walk in the door. I think you would really enjoy our preacher and our little church. So we'll see you on 19, episode 19. We'll see you then. Thanks. Here's one called Blue Virginia Blue. Have you ever been to Richmond, November, while the cold Virginia rain is coming down? Let me tell you, friend, it's no pleasure when you're all alone and a stranger to the town. Don't take me wrong, I do like Virginia, and Richmond full of hospitality. Except for one Virginia girl I know of, who's made a perfect lovebird out of me. Blue, Virginia blue, there ain't no blue like blue, Virginia blue. There's no girl in the whole wide world will break your heart like a Virginia girl. Ain't no blue like blue, Virginia blue. She called me up in St. Paul, Minnesota, says I need you here in Richmond right away. Take the bus and I'll meet you at the station. Bring some clothes, I might want you to stay. My bus pulled in the station late this evening. There ain't a soul around this place but me. She must have changed her mind or just forgot. And her phone ain't in the phone directory. Blue, Virginia blue. There ain't no blue like blue, Virginia blue. There's no girl in the whole wide world that'll break your heart like a Virginia girl. Ain't no blue like blue, Virginia blue. One more time. Wish I had the money for a taxi and a warm and cozy place to lay me down, instead of standing all alone in Richmond while that cold Virginia rain is coming down. Blue, Virginia blue. There ain't no blue like blue, Virginia blue. There's no girl in the whole wide world that'll break your heart like a Virginia girl. Ain't no blue like blue, Virginia blue. No, there ain't no blue like blue, Virginia blue. Ain't no blue like blue, Virginia blue.
I'm using my Bible for a road map.
That's a banjo or a mandolin kick off either one. Good girl.
I'm using my Bible for a road map. The children of Israel used to do. They crossed the Red Sea of destruction, for God there to see them safely through. There'll be no detours in heaven, no rough roads along the way. I'm using my Bible for a road map. My last stop is heaven some sweet day. I'm using my Bible for a road map. The 10 commandments will tell me what to do. The 12 disciples are my road signs, and Jesus will take me safely through. There'll be no detours in heaven, no rough roads along the way. I'm using my Bible for a road map. My last stop is heaven some sweet day. There'll be no detours in heaven, no rough roads along the way. I'm using my Bible for a road map. My last stop is heaven some sweet day. My last stop is heaven some sweet day.
All right, good job. Jesus died on the cross from a dogwood tree. He gave his life and soul just for you and me. The dogwood was never to grow strong and tall again.